just sharing my screen with you now. Well, such a name to conjure with, Cezanne. What did Picasso say about him? He said, Cezanne is the father of us all. And Matisse, well, he said something quite similar. In fact, it seems as though in the first decade of the 20th century, in the run-up to the First World War, when there's a proliferation of different kinds of modern art movements, they all claimed in some way to derive their inspiration from Paul Cezanne, which is interesting when you consider the man. Here's a youthful portrait of him. It's not how we'll be seeing him through most of our sessions, because by that time he's got a long beard and unkempt hair and a bald pate. What he's still got, though, is that look in his eyes. People who met him tended to be a little bit wary of him. He seemed very gloomy, very angry, and also quite grumpy in general conversation. It was only the people who really took time to get to know him that understood that there was a very kind, gentle, shy man underneath who suffered from a great deal of self-doubt. For a lot of people, it never got that far. So a strange figure to be the talisman of modern art in a way. And what we're going to try and see over the next couple of sessions is just where that idea came from. Is it true, in fact? Today, of course, we've got that wonderful thing called hindsight. We can see how everything fitted together. The other thing I would ask you to bear in mind is how his art must have seemed at the time. We have this problem, don't we, that we've all got these lovely coffee table books with the different periods of art in them. And of course, we expect to turn over from, the realists and find the impressionists, and the impressionists and find the post-impressionists. It simply didn't work like that at the end of the 19th century. And in fact, not until well into the 20th century. All of these new movements and ideas in art were competing with established art, what we often call academic art, the academic style. And that ruled the roost in almost all of the important institutions of Europe, right the way until, frankly, the middle of the 20th century. So anybody who was striking out and doing something new had to be prepared to deal with a massive amount of criticism, derision, hostility, sometimes even actual violence. That did happen on a number of occasions. And as a personality, Paul Cezanne is not exactly equipped to deal with any of those things. So no wonder he spent most of his working life as a virtual recluse. So what we're trying to do now is to unpick some of that and understand where he came from and how that all happened. Let's have a look at a self-portrait. He didn't paint masses of these. He wasn't a Rembrandt who was sort of documenting himself at almost in every year of his life, but there are a number that show the man as he saw himself. And also something of the technique. I suppose the question we ought to ask here is Cezanne an impressionist? Certainly quite, for a long time anyway, he was lumped in with the Impressionists. He exhibited with the Impressionists on 2 occasions, and he certainly knew them all and established lifelong friendships with a good number of them. But there's something about the style of this self-portrait, done when he was in his early 30s, in fact, that is very different. It's painted in huge, thick slabs of paint. This is not the style of Claude Monet or Pierre-Auguste Renoir, certainly not Degas, who was very unsure about Cezanne indeed. There's something that almost makes this look like it's been carved. It's got a real structure rippling through it. It's not really about surface effects either. Something that made him eventually very dissatisfied with the output of the so-called Impressionists. They're all about capturing a fleeting moment, the effects of light, etc. The surface is everything, if you like, with the Impressionists. That would never really do for Paul Cezanne. Cezanne liked the structure, the rhythms, the rippling effects of geometry that could be found, well, eventually, when he learned to look, he found it everywhere. He found it in absolutely everything, from a bowl of sugar to a mountain range to a man's face. And that's what sets Cezanne apart. That's why he's not just an impressionist, he's much more than that. And he's paving the way for all the styles of art that will follow as we get into the late 19th and the early 20th centuries. Bit of background to begin with, he's from Provence. Here we are in the middle of Aix-en-Provence, which is his hometown. Family had been established here in his father's time. Both his mother and father were Southerners, but